it's Liz Yuille from Old Stables Crafts. Thank you very much for watching me again and for tuning in today. Today's project is this one, and it's a little mini tiny weeny tic tac holder. This is the tiny version of the one that I did for the second annual Ultimate Pink Blog Hop, which I was part of on Sunday. If you haven't already had a look at those blogs, please do. I'll put a link in this video or in the associated blog post for this video so that you can have a look at that if you so desire. Now, these are, as I say, the teeniest weeniest little Tic Tacs I have ever seen. I think they are only available, basically, unless you go on Amazon and get them from someone who's bought them what I would call legitimately. I think they are only available in these big boxes and only as a duty-free item. So I bought these on my way back from On Stage in April. That was in Amsterdam. The date is long. It goes until May next year, so I was really not worried about buying them so far in advance, although I had planned for them to be used at this time of year. So this is, as I say, the mini teeny weeny version of the Tic Tac holder that I did for the Pink Blog Hop. So it's got the smallest selection of, or smallest pieces of cardstock probably in the world for a project. However, so let's have a look at what we've got. This is, I did the original in Cajun Craze. This one I'm doing in Pumpkin Pie. So this measures 2.5 by 1.5 inches. The measurements will be on the associated blog post, which is below in the description bar as ever, so don't worry about writing them down. So 1.5 by 2.5 inches. I have a strip of pumpkin pie that is 2.5 by 5 5/8. The 2.5 is more important than the 5 5/8. It could be a little wider if you want. And then I've got designer series paper that is 1 3/8 by 3/4 inch, and then just a scrap of Very Vanilla, which is slightly narrower. It's one of those, it's just slightly narrower jobs. This happens to be an offcut from when I do the mats for my cards, and it happens to be just the right width. So it's a non-exact measurement. I'm thinking between 1/8 and 1/4 inch narrower, but just a bit narrower, so you've got some of the pattern paper without covering it up completely. But we do need it wide enough to stamp on. I highly recommend using a pattern paper that can go in any direction. This is from the Spooky Nights designer series paper pack, as is this, which is where I got my colour scheme from. So let's get started. I'll start with scoring and then we'll go on to the stamping. So I'm this time going to use my trimmer to score because we are doing fairly small but fairly precise score lines. So with my 1.5 by 2.5 inch piece, I'm going to score, and here's where it gets silly, 5/16 inch from each of these ends. Now, because it's a small score, I'm going to use this side of the trimmer to measure, because then I can get a really good butt up against it. And 5/16 inch is this little mark just before the inch mark. It's about 2.4 centimetres for those of you in metric. In fact, I'll write that down whilst I remember it. So that's 2.4 centimetres. This is your scoring blade, the light grey one, and just give it a couple meaning, you know, more than one, a couple of scores, and that's the scoring on that. Then on this piece, I need to score at 7/16, so there are 8/16 in an inch. So I want the 7/16, and again I'm coming just before the 1/2 inch mark and score. then 1 1/8, so 1 and the big blob is 1/8. And then I'm going to turn it over and do 7/16 again. Okay, and again, that's all the scoring that's needed on that, and in fact that's all the scoring we need to do. So the two bits that are not vitally, well, they are vital because you need this measurement as well, but yeah, cut it that length and score at those marks, and it'll be fine. So before I actually fold this, I'm going to do some stamping because I want this rat to be on the wrap. So for that, I need the Spooky Cat stamp set, which I had stupidly put over the other side of the room. So my baby A block and the rat, pop that on there. And then, before I do my embossing, I'm going to take my embossing buddy and just make sure that that's not got any sticky fingerprints on. Now, you need to be aware of how this is going. So this edge is going in here, then this is this bit, and this bit goes underneath. So this, the larger piece, is where we are going to stamp. And the rat will just fit. Let me just, it's not the easiest thing to see through a block when you've got a camera in the way. It's bottom out time, I think. In fact, this would be actually easier. I'm going to take it off this block and get Versamark all over my fingers, probably. I'm going to put it on a longer block because it will then be easier to see the lines. When you put it on a really small block, the lines get interrupted by the edges of the block. Aha, that's better. Yay, there you are, there's a tip. So stamp him down, and I can see that that has stamped beautifully. You see that? Possibly. So before that gets too dried out, let me grab my gold embossing powder and some fingers would be useful, and then just dribble that over our image. Make sure there's no bits where they shouldn't be. Nope. Super. Okay, right, heat tool. As ever with your heat tool, make sure it's warm before you use it, and I always bring in my trusty cheese board, blah, blah, and some teeth would be useful. So let's just warm that through, and then this is the bit that I could just watch again and again. And as ever, I'm not a wafter. I'm a point the heat gun where you want it, rather than wafting it. Okay, so that's that done. So let's take that off. Woo! Be careful not to do that, because that could still be a little warm, which means that it would smudge if you touch it. So we don't want to do that. The other stamping that I want to do is with the Eat at Your Own Risk, and that I will use my little baby A block, and I'm actually going to stamp this upside down. I've got the Cajun Craze again, and the reason I'm going to stamp this upside down is so that I can get this at the top of my strip, because I will then cut it down so that it's the right size. And I'm going to change slightly how I put this together, because I think it would be better to do it the way I'm going to change it to. Famous last words, of course. Right, okay, nearly 10 minutes. Right, okay, so this is what we're aiming for. So I'm going to fold my lines, and then those I'm only going to fold. I'm not going to burnish, and that's because they're basically there as a guide rather than as a definite. That I am going to burnish. I'm going to stick my bits of paper on before I get too much older. I am going to use Fast Fuse. You could use snail, because it is only paper and it is only an adornment. I'm going to call this the back. And I'll call this the front. And I'm not going to stick that on yet. This is where I've decided to make a little bit of a change. So I am actually going to take my Tic Tacs and wrap the whole thing round. And this is why I say those folds are there more as a guide than anything. So I'm going to put Fast Fuse there and Fast Fuse there. That's interesting, actually. I think the red is bigger than the... How strange. Oh well, there we go. Anyway, most bizarre. Right, so Fast Fuse here. And preferably not all over my work surface. Oh well, I'll get that off in a minute. And Fast Fuse here. Because I've wrapped it round, I do know where my Fast Fuse for that bit needs to go. So again, I'm going to wrap that round. Actually, I'm not going to wrap it around for that bit. So this goes onto the fold line, just so that it butts up against the fold line there, and then pop that in place before you stick the back on, so that you know you've got a fairly snug fit, and then give it a good press, slip that out, and then come in and burnish so that you know it's very well stuck. Not that there's a huge amount of pressure on it, but it's just good to know that it's properly stuck, and then that, as you see, goes nicely in there. And this is, as I say, where I'm going to change it slightly. I'm going to cut this so that it's the right length, but I'm going to attach the... I'm just doing this by eye. I'm going to attach the... Isn't it sad when your brain just stops? Baker's twine in a slightly different way. So I'm actually going to cut a piece of baker's twine that I think is going to be about the right length. So I'm going to use more baker's twine than I did on the original. But I actually think it would be nice to tie this closed. So, and I'm quite happy to have it across the back. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tie it closed and then stick the front piece on, trapping the baker's twine in the process. For no other reason than I just fancy doing it that way. This is where you need to have 5 sets of hands, of course. In fact, if I do the knot... Why is it that your brain just goes away the moment the camera starts rolling? It's just life, I guess. That's better. So it's a snug fit. Adjust the bow. And then pop that round to the side. We're nearly there. Dimensionals. So what I'm then going to do is pop a couple of dimensionals on the back. And then if I've got those roughly in the right place, I can boop. Managed to not trap that, but there we go. I actually do prefer that. What I might add, as I've now got that space, because I've kind of done this on the fly, is some rhinestones, because we've got these lovely black rhinestones, especially for the autumn-winter catalogue. If I can get them out of the packet, of course. And find my piercing tool, which is buried under my directions. So I'm just going to take one of the larger ones and pop that there. There we go. I actually do think I prefer that. Yay! So there you are, the smallest Tic Tac holder in the world for the smallest Tic Tacs in the world. Say the larger version, which is for the really big version, which I did for the pink blog hop. I'll link that below so you can get the measurements for that. And I'll no doubt at some point in the next few weeks do one for what I will call the standard size. So I hope you've enjoyed that. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and please, 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 if you would like to subscribe, that would be lovely. I am still doing the giveaway of the Merry Patterns stamp set. This, if you remember, is available free in the until the end of October with an order of £250 or more. If you place that order in my online store, you will get this free, gratis and for nothing automatically from Stampin' Up. If, however, you find that that is a bit of a stretch, which I understand, if you shop on my online store, for every £25 you order, and this dates back from the 1st of September through to the end of October, for every £25 you spend, you will be entered into the draw for one of these. I have a number. So that's another way of possibly getting your hands on one of these stamp sets. And it's brilliant. And if you do have a £250 order, then you also get your stamping rewards. So it's not just this you will also get your normal stamping rewards. So always good to know. So I look forward to welcoming you as a customer. And in the meantime, I will hopefully see you again tomorrow. Thanks a lot for watching.